through. We hope to have enough time at the end to open it up to some questions, and basically we'll see how far we get. We intend to go about an hour, but we might go a little over, and depending on circumstances, we might go a little less. I just wanted to also remind everyone that we do have written documentation on a lot of the things that we're going over, and you can see that if you go to bookweb.org, go to e-commerce and ebooks, IndieCommerce, and IC Help Center. There's a lot of information here, and again, we're going to be covering some of this information as we go through our webinar today. Okay, we do ask that you hold all questions until the end of the presentation, so you might want to jot them down as we move along so you don't forget. Okay, we're going to move on then to our very first topic. The first thing we want to talk about is the ABA Message Center. This is a link that you'll find on the top of your website in the administration toolbar right here, the ABA Message Center. We use the ABA Message Center to post information that we feel is pretty vital to stores. We might put information here about a planned maintenance window. We might put information here about fraudulent orders that seem to be coming in. We just basically, if we felt it important enough to put it in there, we think it's important to you. Generally, when there is a new message available, the ABA Message Center link will turn red. So if you see that red link at the top, that we're really urging you to take a look at the information there. If you were to click on it, you can see that we actually had some information yesterday about a planned outage, and we have a lot of other things. If you look through the information here, you'll see there at one time back in May, Authorize.net's servers were down, and we were unable to process credit cards at the time. So these are the kinds of things we let you know through the ABA Message Center. If you hover over the link, you'll see there's also an IndieCommunication archive. These are emails that we had been sending out last year. You can see that between June of last year and August, or I should say September of last year and June of this year, we didn't really send these out. Of course, we were pretty busy with the migration, but we have picked those up again. So again, there's information here, even if you're just going through and you haven't looked at them before and you think it's old information, some of it is timeless information. So it's probably worth going through and taking a look. And similarly, we also have a link for Kobo Communication Archives. Again, if you look at these, you'll see that they had stopped late last year in December. We picked them up again in June of this year. So again, if you're selling Kobo ebooks and e-readers and whatnot, you can check the Message Center, and you can find some helpful information there. Okay. Now, the next thing that we want to go into is going to be store preferences. Now, we're not going to cover these extensive documentation in the IndieCommerce Help Center. Under e-commerce administration, we have right here, store features and preferences. But again, we're going to cover that here. In this case, we're not going to go into great detail with all of them. We really just want to cover the latest ones that have been added to the list. Now, the store preferences, we'll go here. When we go to store preferences, basically, we occasionally add features to the site that can be toggled on or off. We'd say we put up a feature and it turns out it interferes with the way someone has set up their website, and often we'll put up a toggle so that you can store by store turn that option on or off. So there are a few of them here. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Again, we do have written information on them. But the ones we wanted to cover right now are the last three at the bottom here. The first one says always save credit card profile. When we were running in Drupal 6, what stores and customers found was that as a customer went through the checkout process, their credit card information was essentially stored for them automatically. Now, the customer wasn't asked for this, it simply happened, but what it meant was that the store could then go back to an order 2 or 3 months later, they could reauthorize the credit card, they could add things to the order, and upcharge the card. In Drupal 7, customers are actually given an option to opt out of storing their credit card information, and of course, when given that option, customers generally opt out and they don't save their information. And that means that a lot of stores are finding that right now when customers place orders, the store has maybe 3 or 4 weeks in which to work with that credit card before the pre-authorization expires. And this is taking some stores by surprise and proving to be a little bit difficult. So if you are used to the way that orders worked in Drupal 6, that is, customers' credit card information was stored automatically, you can cause your new Drupal 7 site to behave the same way. Just check the box, always save credit card profile. And then remember to save configuration at the very bottom. The next one here is hide logo in invoice. This one, again, pretty self-explanatory. When you email an invoice to a customer from a particular order, the store's logo that they put at the top of the site is placed at the top of the invoice. In some cases, the logo is too big for this, and it covers a lot of information in the invoice itself. So again, pretty self-explanatory. If you find yourself in that position, just navigate over here and click Hide Logo in Invoice, and your customers will not have to see that. And then the last one on the page here is Disable Search by ISBN 10. Now we have added back in the ability to search by ISBN 10. We had removed this. We figured that ISBN 10s, the convention, disappeared about 10 years ago. But as it turns out, a lot of stores and a lot of institutions still use ISBN 10. So we have been asked by a lot of stores, could we please put that back in? And we have. Now this can cause some issues with custom products. If you're giving a custom product a SKU that is 10 digits long or even 13 digits long, frankly, it can cause issues with the search. If you want to disable ISBN 10 search, just again navigate here, check the box, and click Save Configuration. All right. Now the next thing we're going to go on to, we're going to take a look at creating a few custom pages. Now this, for instance, a custom home page and a few other places where customers may land if they get an error or something like that, and we can customize those pages. So the first one I want to do is your home page. Now, in this case, if you've seen the training videos that we've put up earlier, you'll be familiar with this site and this particular page as we discussed how to put it together. Right now, this is the front page of my website, and that's I'm thinking that's not really appropriate. Now, I've created another page that I want to use as my actual home page, and I've actually called it Greetings. And if I go to the page, you can see this is pretty much what it looks like, a little picture of my store, a little bit of information about me, and that's about it. So I want to cause this to be my actual home page. Now, there are two ways actually that we can do this. There are a couple of ways that we can do this. The first way is there is a setting within the configuration menu here and under System and Site Information. And what we can do here is take the relative path of a particular page that you've created. In this case, the page is called Greetings. And if I put that information here and I save it, what the system will do is automatically take my Greetings page, and it will cause that page to be my home page, to the exclusion of everything else in the middle content section here. So this is all that is currently displaying. Now the other way to do this, I'm going to remove this for the moment. The other way to cause a page to become your official home page is to go to the page itself. I'm going to go back to my content section. I'm going to go back to my Greetings page. I'm going to edit the page itself. And if you go on creating a page, you'll know about these controls. We have some publishing options down here. I'm going to publish the page. I'm going to promote it to the front, and I'm going to cause it to be sticky at the top. That means if I promote other things to the front page, they will all be promoted lower than this particular page. If I save this information and then go back to my home page, you can see here I now have this as my home page, but it also keeps the other information that I had. So I had promoted one of my events to the front, or in this case, my newsletter to the front, and that information is still here. So my front page has been augmented and now shows both of those pieces. Obviously, if you use the other method, you would want to create a specific page that pretty much said everything that you want to say on your home page. In this way, we can create one small home page, but I can also promote my newsletter and my individual events to the front page. Okay. Now, also, under the topic of custom pages, there are pages that your customer can run into. For instance, if somebody tries to go to my greetings page and they spell it wrong, what happens is they get this, the page not found. Another common one you may have seen, if you try to log out of somewhere that you're not logged into, you'll get something like this, access denied. So we can actually cause these pages to say what we want them to. And where that is taken care of is under, again, configuration, system, site information. And we have here, this is again our front page that we were using, and these are the error pages. So if I create a page and that I want customers to see when they receive an access denied or a page not found, I create each of those pages and put the relative path here and click Save Configuration. Then it will no longer go to a default page; it'll go to a very specific page. So, for instance, just to show you, I'm going to go to this particular page. So here's a page that my colleague Ryan has put together. It is my custom access denied page. So what I'm going to do is grab the relative path. I'm going to go back to configuration, system, site information. And at the bottom here, under access denied, that was my error page. So I'm going to go like this. Oops, no problem. It's my access denied. I'm going to save that. And now if I were to, actually, if I were to log out here, for instance, and try to log out again, I get a special access denied page. It doesn't just say access denied, but it gives a little more information that is very particular to the store. We'll log back in. Okay, and again, the same thing, we do have another page that we put up for page not found, and it's the same thing. We just grab the URL for the page that was created. This is the page not found, and again, go back to configuration, system, site information, and again, page not found. We put our special page in there and click save. So now people will see very specific information if they either get the access denied, or they'll see specific information. Okay. Okay, now the next thing we're going to take a look at, we've heard this from a lot of stores, is store roles. Now, when you are working with a site, you're logging in as an administrator. Of course, your customers are logging in just as customers. Everyone creates an account in the same way, but store administrators have additional access, of course, into the back end of the website. So stores have asked recently, how can my other employees have an account here that they can get in as a store administrator? Now, the way you do this is everyone, including your customers and your staffers, everyone first has to create an account. So the first thing you would do, if we go to log out, if we go to my account and go to create new account. So everyone's going to have to fill out this information, a username, email address, and a password, and confirm the password. Once your staff has set up that particular account, what you're going to do, go back to login. What you need is the email address from that particular account. And what you're going to do with that email address is, as a store administrator, you're going to go to store, configuration, and store roles. And all you need to do is put the user's email address here. So for instance, we'll grab an email address here. Oops. We're going to drop that in here. And we're going to choose one of the 3 roles that are available. Keep in mind, a store admin has all of the control. That is the greatest level of access. They can assign roles to other users. They can deny roles to other users. An order admin has access only to order information. They can edit orders, they can create new orders, but they do not have access to store content. And the reverse is true for store editor. Store editor can create and edit and do not have access to orders. So in this case, we're going to make CK one of our store administrators, and we click Assign Role, and immediately you'll see that CK has been added as a store administrator. And that's it. After that, when they log into their account, just like any other customer, your staffer will now see the administrative menu at the top. We do encourage stores to have every employee with their own login. We've seen a lot of instances where an entire store staff all use the same login information. First of all, we don't recommend this, because if everyone is working on orders, everyone shows up as the same user. So if you want to know who did that with a particular order, everyone is sort of hiding behind the same user ID thing, and it's a little more dangerous. We have seen in the past where a store that had everyone using the same account let one of those employees go. And of course, a disgruntled employee who holds the only password, they can go back home, they can change the password, lock everyone else out, and in this particular case, this disgruntled employee posted horrible things on the website. So again, we really encourage all stores to set up a separate account for all employees. Okay. Moving along, we want to go through a few helpful tips when configuring your site. And really what we're talking about here is mostly the home page. There are a few things that we think are important to keep in mind. Now, as I go through these, it occurs to me I have mentioned some of these to certain stores. For instance, I often tell stores, unless you're selling your bookstore cat or bookstore dog, you may not want to take up your entire front page with a picture of said cat or dog. But one woman said to me, but my customers love my bookstore dog. So far be it from me to tell you how to market your site to your customers. But what we're going to look at here, or listen to anyway, are just some basic tips that you might want to keep in mind. First of all, when a customer comes to your site, you might want to consider that you are only going to get a certain number of clicks out of that customer. It may be 3, it may be a dozen, and it may only be 1 or 2. Therefore, whenever I go to a site and I see a separate tab for store information, and another one for store hours, and another one for contact us, all I can think is you're just making your customer hunt for information. So one of the first things we recommend is creating something like this, a block with all of the necessary information. Right here, these are now 3 clicks that my customer doesn't have to go through. Here's my location, here's how you can contact me, phone and email, and here are my store hours. So right off the bat, a ton of information, no clicks. We also encourage stores to utilize the space on their site well. If you have a lot of white space in your sidebars, you might consider putting additional blocks there. Sometimes your sidebars with their blocks will be longer than your content in the middle, and you might want to consider putting more information or moving your blocks around to make the website a little bit better. It is possible, if you have seen our documentation and video on creating blocks, when you create a block, you can arrange for that block to appear on certain pages and not other pages. So while you may have 50 blocks created for your site, They don't all have to be visible at the same time. Some may be visible only during checkout. Others may be visible only on your event pages. So keep those things in mind. You don't have to cram your site full of all of your blocks all the time. Using an appealing color palette, something that matches the colors in the store. Obviously, I don't actually have a store, but you can take care of this under Appearance. If you go to Appearance and Settings, in this case, I'm using Responsive Bardic. This particular theme has a nifty color wheel that you can use to change colors on different sections, different parts of the site. Whether it's the block backgrounds or the header, the footer, the content section, the background, and whatnot. So there are a few things that you can do there. Again, that is generally handled under Appearance and the settings for the particular theme that you're using. Okay. Now, again, I've seen stores that have posted on their front page a long, unbroken paragraph of how I got into book selling and why I love books, and I come from a long line of dedicated readers, et cetera, et cetera. But when your customers come to the site, that's generally not the information they're looking for. There is a place for that on your website, but it's generally not on the home page. Consider that when customers come to your site, they're often looking for a filter. There are millions of books out there, and when a customer comes to you, they often want to know, what is a bookseller reading? Someone who works with books, what do they recommend? So that's often what stores will put up. So instead of a picture of my store with some information like this, other stores will put up just an array, a table of book jackets that all click onto their actual product page. So the store uses as much of their front page to sell books as possible. Okay. As far as events, if you have events regularly, you definitely want to be including them. These two blocks here are automatically supplied by Drupal. There's the calendar here. Anytime you create an event and give it a date, it will appear as a bold or linkable date on the calendar. And then there's this next block down here, which is upcoming events. So while I can tell when an event is on the calendar, I can tell what an event is on the upcoming events. So again, let people know what's going on in your store. Okay. If you decide to create a link to another website, for instance, under the New York Times bestsellers, we recommend that you create that link to go to another window. So you're not dragging people away from your site. If they close this window that they're on, they wind up back at your site. So again, links to outside websites, they should open in a new window. Okay. Definitely add your social networks. If you have a Facebook account, Twitter account, et cetera, please put that information up. Your customers are probably going to be interested in that. And the last thing I'll mention here for good practice, helpful tips, that is, for configuring your site, is to update your site regularly. We don't necessarily pull rank on this, but it's actually in the IndieCommerce written agreement that stores will make a good faith effort to update their sites and keep their content current and not let it run too long. Again, we've never really held anybody to that, but we feel that's important. Okay. All right. Okay, now we're going to go on to a little more nuts and bolts. We're going to take a look at creating some custom content. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a content type, and then we're going to create a piece of that content. Now, again, we've put up some documentation on this, and there is also a short video on content types and the differences between them. In this case, when we're talking about content types, we're talking about things like pages or events, and even things like gift cards and products, sweaters, and things like that. These are all content types. Some of them are product classes, but they are still all content types. So by default, stores will find the page, content type, the product, gift card, event, and book page. But as you can see, it is possible to add other content types here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a content type, and I'm going to call it staff recommendation. And then we're going to post a couple of staff reviews up there. So in this case, what we're going to do, we're going to go to structure. We're going to go to content types and add content type. In this case, I'm going to call it staff recommendation. I can put a description down here, although I'll just copy the same information. Okay. Now again, we're not going to go too far into this. We are going to have videos posted on creating content that really gets further into the nuts and bolts here. I just wanted to show you generally how this is done. So creating a content type is fairly simple. I just want to put a couple of things in there. It's going to be called staff recommendations. There we go. So now if I scroll down the list of content types, I can see I now have one called staff recommendations. But by default, if I simply tried to create one of these, what I would notice, if I go to content, add content now, staff recommendations, what you'll notice is that there is nowhere for me to put a book list, which is fairly important on something called staff recommendations. So I'm going to go back to my content types. I'm going to go back to staff recommendations, and I need to put some fields in there. There's an additional field. Now, by default, when I'm creating this new piece of content, staff recommendations, it's going to ask me for a title. It's going to ask me for a body, which is the main information, and meta tags and a few other things. But it doesn't ask me here for a book list. So I'm going to come down here to our existing fields, and I'm going to add an existing field. And in this case, we're looking for this one, which is product reference. And put it up there, and we're going to click Save. Okay. And now, if I go back to Content, Add Content, and I try to add a staff recommendation, now you can see there is a book list here. So we're going to call this Scott's Suggestions. And we'll just put a little bit of text in here. Obviously, I'd write something a little more interesting about myself, if there were anything to write. And we're going to save this. So here's my page, and it doesn't have a lot of information. I could have uploaded an image of myself, but I don't want to scare customers away. But what I do want to do is add some books to my book list. Okay. Now I actually have some information here. Grab that. Now, when you're adding a book to a book list, I'll just mention this here, the way this tool works is once you drop an ISBN into the field, what you want to do is with your cursor, click outside of the field, and you'll see a little tool run here as it searches for the information and pulls it up. Okay, I'm going to grab another book here. I'm going to add this also. Click Add Another Item. And drop in a different ISBN. Again, just click outside of the box, and it'll pull that information up. So those are the two books I want to put on my book list. I'm going to come down to the bottom here and click Save. Now I have a book list here, but it doesn't look exactly the way I want it. So I'm going to need to change something here. Content types. Again, to staff recommendations, and I need to manage the way this is all being displayed. So for instance, if I look at the display for my staff recommendation content type, it wants to show a body without a label. It wants to show a book list that's only a label. So in here, I'm going to go to my book list. I'm going to say what I want really is product reviews full with all the metadata and the buy button. And it doesn't need a label on it at all. I click Save. Now if I go back to the content that I just created, which is Scott's Suggestions, now we can see there's Scott's Suggestions with a couple of books on my book list. Now these books come with their own reviews that are already in the database, but I have some information that I want to add to those. And there are two ways to add a review to a book. One is to go to the actual product page for the book. And here you'll see a little tab that says Staff Reviews. I'm going to click on that. There's a link here that says Create a Review. And it offers me, we'll put my name up there. And I have a little review here. This. Drop my review in. And then down at the bottom, I'm just going to click Submit. Okay. Now, if I look at the product page, it now has the description that I wrote with my name on it. Now, when I do, and it also puts a little staff pick icon on there. Now, the good thing about this is that if a customer is not necessarily on my staff picks page, but simply searching through the database, if they happen across this book, they will see the staff pick right on it. The other thing is that if you add a review through the staff reviews on the product page, if there are other editions of this title, hardcover, large print, audio, things like that, that are all linked together in the database, then this review will be carried across all versions of that particular book. So that's pretty cool. I've never listened to the audio version, but I have no problem recommending it. Okay, now the other way to add a review to a particular book, in this case, we're going to go to content. We'll go back to the page itself that I just created. So the first way is to go to the actual product page for the book, and you can add your review there. But the other way is to go to a book list on a particular page. So here we go back to the book list that we've created, and you can see up here it says No Review. If I click on it, it pops open a little WYSIWYG editor. So I can now put my own review in there. So I'm going to grab this information. I'm going to drop this in here. And I'm also going to include this review on the product page. If I don't do this, it'll only appear on my book list page. So I'm going to do this. Now it will appear on the product page itself. But in this case, it will not be carried across to other versions of this particular title. Now I'll come down to the bottom and click Save. So now when you look at my Scott's Suggestions page, you can see my choices with my review. And then again, my next title here, let's see. As you can see, while I did add a review to this product in particular, it doesn't necessarily appear on my book list when I put it. Let's go back. So again, if I want my review to appear here, I want to go edit the book list. And I'm going to add my review here. So again, I'll grab this information. Include it there. And click Save. And that's it. So in just a matter of a few minutes, we've created a new content type called Staff Recommendations. We've created a page, we've added a book list to it, and we've added a couple of reviews to those particular books. And there you go. We're well on our way. Okay, now The next thing I want to show, really just to, as an example, we're not going to go into this in any real detail. I want to show you what can be done. So we're going to take a look at a view that, again, my colleague Brian has graciously put together. Now, views are a powerful but fairly complicated tool. We are not going to get into any particulars here. Views generally require their own webinar, and we will probably have one at some point in the future. But a view is basically a way of creating a list of parameters by which you can tell your Drupal website to pull certain information from certain pages and present it in a particular fashion. So, for instance, what Ryan has done is she has created recommendations, and then she has created a view, and she has told the view essentially to look at the page that I've created. From that page, I want to pull the book jacket, I want to pull the link to the product page, and I want them to be presented in a block, and I want that block to rotate on its own. And that's exactly what we have right here. It's a little slideshow. Each one of these is a clickable title. If I click on it, I'll go to the product page. But it is information that sits off to the side. It shows a bunch of different titles, but it doesn't really get in the way of the website. It's a little different from a slideshow that takes up the whole top of the website. So again, we're not going to get into how this was built. There is documentation on views if you want to take a look at it in the IndieCommerce Help Center. Okay, but just to give you an idea of what is possible just by creating a page. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is going to be a little similar to what we were just looking at. We're going to create a custom product class. Now, of course, creating a content type, we created staff recommendations. You might create something called article or newsletter or press release. These are things that once you've created a different class or a different type of content, you can separate your content. If all of your content were all created just as pages, you'd have hundreds of pages to have to slog through to try and find one in particular. But by creating some of your pages as staff recommendations, others as, let's see, others will have, okay, so you can create content as different types. That will make things easier for you to sort through them. Some of them are staff recommendations, and some of them are events, and others are different kinds of products. And you can look for just those particular pieces of content that you want. So having different content types and product classes allows you to keep things separated, so you don't have to treat everything all the same. So in this case, we're going to create a different type of content. In this case, we're going to create something that you can actually sell through the website. So this is a content type that is called a product class. So what we're going to do to create a product class, it's actually very simple. We go to Store, we go to Products, and we're going to go to Manage Classes. And we've created a number of classes. These are all saleable items. Some of them appear here automatically. ABA product, of course. Things like gift cards. These are modules that are enabled and create a content type or a product class along with them. But we've created things like sweaters and T-shirts and a few other things. In this case, down at the bottom here, I am just going to create one called mug. I have some mugs that I want to sell through my site. Okay, so and you can read the information down here. It'll sort of guide you along. But all it wants is a class ID. I'm going to put that in lowercase. In this case, we're going to do mug. And then down here, pretty self-explanatory. These are mugs that we're selling. And I'm going to save. And that was very simple. So now I have a product class. It is called mug, and the description is mugs. And I'm going to, so we edit this. Let's see. So now what I want to do is create a piece of content. If I go to add content, you can see now there is a mug. And I can, now automatically when I create a product class that is a saleable content type, it automatically gives me a couple of options, for instance, for an image here, and it's going to ask me for some product information as I go through and create it. And as it turns out, I do have a little bit of product information. Take this a little bit. I have some content here. That. Up here, again, I'm just going to call this white mug. And then down here, I actually have an image that I can use. And I'm just going to upload that here. It shows a little image of my mug. As I come down a little further, it needs a SKU. In this case, I'm just going to call it mug001. Now you'll notice as you walk through these pages, some of the fields have asterisks, which means they are required, of course. But in this case, I want to point out that what you put for the sell price, even though it is not required here, you're going to want to put the same thing as the list price. This product is shippable. I do want customers to be able to purchase it and have it shipped to them. And I'm not going to bother with the length and the height and the width and all that. And I'm simply going to click Save at the bottom. And now I have an item that I can present to my customers, and they can now purchase it. Now there are a couple of things on this page that you may not want available. For instance, the image has a little label that says image. That's pretty obvious. There's also a few things down here. There's a list price and a cost and a price, but really my customers don't need that. Whoops. All they need is a price that's posted up here rather large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my content type for mug, and I want to manage the display for this. There are a few things that are displaying, and most of them I don't need. And in fact, a lot of them aren't even filled in, so the weight and the dimensions don't even show up. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull these, grab that little arrow, and I'm going to pull those down to below the hidden header there. So we can hide these. I don't need the sell price. I don't need my customer to see the cost or even the list price. I do want them to see the image, but they don't need to see a label that says image. Do that. They don't even really need to see the SKU, but you know what? I'm going to leave that there. Sometimes that might be helpful to them if they want to copy it down. I'm going to click Save. And now when I go back to my white mug, you can see we've cleaned up the page a little bit. Now the customer sees only what they need to. The image, they see the SKU in case they want to jot that down and bring it into the store. They can see the price, and they have their Add to Cart button. So again, fairly simple. In just a few minutes, we've created, again, another content type, and we have allowed, that is a content type that can be sold through the website. Okay. All right. Now, let's see. Now, the next thing we're going to take a look at is going to be a drop-down menu. Now, some themes have a drop-down menu that is built in by default, and others don't. The one that I'm using here, this theme is called Responsive Bardic. It does not have an automatic drop-down menu. So we can force the issue. There is a module called Superfish. If you're familiar with Drupal 6, you may be familiar with the Suckerfish menu, which was essentially a drop-down menu. And now in Drupal 7, they call it Superfish. And what this does when the module is enabled, it creates a few blocks and makes them available in your block section. If we go to Structure and Blocks, we can actually take a look at these are going by default. They're going to be disabled under your disabled blocks, and you can see them. There's actually 4 of them. There's Superfish 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what you do is, if you go to Configure, you can tell this block that I want it to show my main menu. I might tell it to show a different menu, whatever menu I've set up. And the idea is that this menu is going to drop down if it's been set up that way. So in this case, it's going to pull the main menu into the block. it is going to drop down. It's going to be horizontal. That means across the top. The style here is light blue, and we're going to leave all this as it is. And this has already been saved. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my blocks. So Superfish 1 has now been configured to drop down the main menu. So all I have to do now is put it somewhere. For the moment, just for illustrative purposes, I'm going to put it in the header. And I'm going to save that change at the bottom. We're going to go back to the home page. So now we're looking at exactly the same menu. This is the default main menu tabs right here at the top of the Bardic theme. But what we've done is, again, we've taken a Superfish block and we've caused it to show the main menu, and now that menu drops down. So for instance, my staff picks now drop down, whereas here they do not. And that's essentially it. Once the block has been created, you can post it in other block locations, keeping in mind it may not fit very well in other options. The header in this case is probably the best place for this particular menu. Okay, now I have two menus appearing. So if I just want the drop down, what I can do is go to and if I come down here, you can see there's a couple of things that you can toggle on and off. And in this case, I could toggle off the main menu. So now when I go back to the home page, I should not have two menus, but only the one across the top here. So again, just showing you what is available, what can be done. A few things there. All right. Okay. The last thing that we have on our agenda here are meta tags. Now again, we're not going to get too far into the whole concept of meta tags. Meta tags, you're probably aware, are really a way that you can put some keywords into your site that are not generally visible to your customers, but they are visible to search engines. Okay, in fact, let's back up a little bit. Before we get into meta tags, which we're going to cover pretty quickly, there's not a lot of information there. What I want to do is talk a little bit about shipping methods. Now, we had created a particular item here. Now, so what I can do is when I have an item like this, I can set up my own shipping parameters. Maybe I don't want this item to ship with other items, or I want it to ship on its own, something like that. So what we can do here, now that I have a particular item, I'm going to go to Store, Configuration, and we're going to go to Shipping Quotes. Now, everyone here should be familiar with our shipping quotes already. We're not going to get too far into that, but we are going to add a new flat rate quote, and this is going to be specifically for my mugs. We'll say mugs only. Okay. We'll copy that, put that in my line item there. And in this case, my mugs are going to ship for $5. And that's it, $5 flat fee. So I've created a shipping method. And we can see it is right here, mugs only. It is automatically available. I may not want that available just yet. It's not really ready for my customers. So disable it for the moment so they don't see it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some conditions. I don't want just anything to be thrown into my mugs only. It says mugs only. So what I'm going to do is add some conditions that will restrict what this shipping method will be available for. So what I want to do in this case is add a condition, and the condition, what I want it to do, I want it to check the order, and I want it to check the order's product class. And in this case, I want this to be available only if a customer has a mug in their shopping cart. Okay, and now I can forbid other product classes from appearing. So if a customer has several things in their cart, including a mug, they're not going to see this shipping option. Now I'm going to click Save. Now I'm going to go back to our shipping quotes. And I now have mugs only. So again, if I drop this in the shopping cart and I go through the checkout process, my customers will see an option to ship just the mug. It'll be a $5 flat fee. But if they put other items into their cart, then they're no longer going to see my mugs only option. As soon as the customer has more than that in their cart, then it's going to default to the other available shipping options. Okay. All right. So now we want to talk a little bit about meta tags. Again, we're not going to get too far into this. Meta tags are a way that you can include keywords in your website that are essentially visible to search engines. So what you can do here is simply go to Configuration. We have Search and Metadata, and then Meta tag. So the ones that are going to be important to you here are going to be, for instance, global. What we can do is, if we override, you can see as search engines are going through, they're going to look for particular information. So you can include a description here. You can include an abstract if you want, but really what you're looking for are keywords here. And this is the kind of thing, you might put the city that you're in, the kind of books that you sell, stuff like that. Okay, and then again, just fill out the information here and click Save at the bottom. The other one that you might want to do is Node. So for Node, if we click Override, these are for specific pages, so you can actually include meta tags for. Again, by default, this information, these tokens, will pull up the name of the page and the site name. But again, you're going to want to include your keywords here for that particular page. And again, this is all to help search engines find those particular pages. Okay. Okay. All right. Now we are pretty much at the end of our agenda from this end.